Okay, good evening everybody, and both to people in the public gallery and to those watching on live stream. Can I firstly declare the meeting open? It's the ordinary council meeting or commission meeting to be being held at the council chambers in Donnybrook, Wednesday the 28th of June at 5 p.m. Can I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Wadandi people of the Noongar Nation, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. As I say, I declare the meeting open at 5 p.m. and welcome the public gallery. I need to advise that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded in accordance with Council Policy EM/CP2, and I'm to further state that the meeting is being live streamed and digitally recorded in accordance with Council Policy. Members of the public are reminded that no visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed without the permission of the chairperson. Whilst every endeavour has been made to only record those who are actively participating in the meeting, loud comments or noises from the gallery may be picked up in the recording. And I think noting we did have some younger people of the community in here, I'll welcome them as well because it's nice to see young people taking part. In terms of attendances, myself, Gail McGowan, the Commissioner. To my left, Ben Rose, the Chief Executive Officer. To my immediate right, Kim Dolcidelli, the Director, Corporate and Community. And to Kim's right, Ross Marshall, Director of Operations. And to Ben's left, Lauren Clifford, Acting Manager, Executive Services. And Samantha Farquhar, Administration Officer, Executive Services. We have no apologies. We have no approved leave of absence. We have no application for leave of absence. I now turn to item 3, the announcements from the presiding member. I will take this opportunity to make some general comments and provide an information update. Since the last meeting, we've seen a change in leadership in state government, and I welcome the Honourable Roger Cook MLA as our new Premier and the Honourable David Michael as the new Minister for Local Government. I've yet to meet with the new Minister. Yesterday, the CEO and I attended the Southwest Country Zone of the local government meeting, which was held in Busselton. I want to bring 2 matters discussed to the attention of both those present this evening and the community more broadly. One was a presentation on the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, which is due to come into effect on the 1st of July. And I'm aware this issue is the subject of a question during public question time, so I'll save my comments for that. Other than to note for the record that as a former Director General of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, I oversaw the early stages of development of that legislation. Hence, I note a perceived conflict of interest, albeit I've not had any involvement for over 2 years. The second matter was an item put forward by the Shire of Donnybrook Baling Up relating to the issue of mining tenement applications. The paper provided a background to the motions passed at the annual meeting of electors and subsequent action taken by the Shire to promote the need for better notification about tenement applications. There was good support from all member councils, and a motion was passed that in effect asked the Welga State Council to advocate for the Department of Mines, Industry and Safety Regulation to undertake a formal review of the current statutory consultation procedures as they relate to mining tenements and improved notification requirements to private landowners. I thank the Shire staff for their proactive work in this matter, and I've also had a commitment from senior staff at the Department of Mining, Industry, Regulation and Safety to work with the Shire on this matter, and contact details for relevant staff have been exchanged. Another issue that was raised at the annual electors meeting was that of the establishment of a register of leases. I'm advised that the first version of this is due to be uploaded on the website next week in accordance with the commitment to have it operational in July. I'll note that this will be a work in progress as the regulations to support the intent of the recent local government reforms are not yet complete. Hence, the look, feel and content of the register may change. I'll note also that it's not intended to include residential properties on this register. Consultation will also commence shortly on the new property management framework. This framework is designed to bring consistency and rigour to lease arrangements with organisations and entities who lease Shire-owned or controlled properties. I'd also like to acknowledge the Baling Up Progress Association for convening an information session for aspiring local government candidates. This is being held on Saturday the 29th of July, from memory about 5 o'clock, and Rhys Williams, the current Mayor of the City of Mandurah, will be the guest speaker. Rhys was elected in 2017 as one of the youngest mayors in WA history and is a former Young West Australian of the Year. It's a great opportunity for aspiring councillors to get to hear about what being an elected official involves. Related to the issue of aspiring councillors, an area I'd like to focus on this evening is that of what constitutes good governance. This issue has been exercising my mind in terms of the basis of decisions I make. Broadly, the role of a commissioner is to take the place of the elected council and act as both the president and the council. A number of local governments have established governance frameworks, and I'm keen to see something similar developed here. I believe it will provide a useful resource for an incoming council, and I've certainly found the ones developed by other councils useful. One of the points made in such documents, and the one I'm drawing on here has been developed by the City of Wanneroo, is that each local government consists of a number of different communities or subsets of communities. Diverse communities do not share the same aspirations, goals and interests. Consequently, the challenge for a councillor or commissioner is how to govern so that different and often competing interests are recognised, addressed and managed. One of the key ways of doing this involves being clear about roles and responsibilities and having systems and processes that support accountability and having transparent access to information and decision-making processes. Process is one of the things people complain most about in terms of local government, or in fact all forms of government, yet it's often the process that people turn to get reassurance that decisions are being made in a way that is consistent, predictable and in accordance with the legislative framework. Process can be both an enabler and a constraint. People will often feel aggrieved if a decision does not go their way or they disagree with a particular course of action. One way to minimise this is to act predictably and within an agreed governance framework. It's also essential to remember that the councillor, or commissioner in this case, must govern in accordance with the law as it stands, not as they might wish it to be. As we move to establish a new council, the role of policy and procedure will be at the forefront. Councils need to make a community feel engaged, know what is going on and are included in decision making. Equally, the community as individuals and as a collective needs to take responsibility for actions that promote good governance. This includes being respectful and mindful of the impact of their own behaviours and being constructive in their approach. I've been endeavouring to actively promote these elements during my tenure as Commissioner. Equally, a prospective candidate or future councillor will need reassurance that they will enjoy the support of their community. This does not for a minute mean they should not be held accountable for the decisions they make. However, working to a vision and promoting a culture of cooperation and collaboration need to be underpinning principles. We're at a point in time where I'm hoping individuals will be actively thinking about representing their community. Many potentially good candidates may need a bit of encouragement to put themselves forward. My experience says that the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup is a jewel in the crown in Western Australia, and your community deserves the very best in terms of governance. Thank you. Now, in terms of declarations of interest, I did note at the outset my involvement with the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, but I don't see it as a significant matter for this meeting. Public question time, item 5 on the agenda. I do have a number of questions that have been submitted. Before I go through those, can I ask if anyone in the public gallery is also seeking to ask a question or questions? If you can put your hand up so I can see at this stage. Kevin? Yeah, okay. All right. Just you or others? Did I see you nodding your head in the back there or just... No? Okay, perfect. For the time being. Okay, that's fine. So let me go through the ones that have been submitted and deal with those. I have a number of parts of questions from Mr. Shane Sercombe. And I'm going to deal with them sort of en bloc, but I will read out the parts of the questions. As the chairperson of the Audit Committee for 4 years, has Ian Telford provided a declaration of interests and is it available? I missed one part of it. Do you think live streaming audit committee meetings would be simple be a simple and effective tool in improving audit outcomes? Then, as the chairperson of the audit committee for 4 years, has Ian Telfer provided a declaration of interest, and is it available? As CEO of WA Press, has the audit committee chairperson declared a financial interest regarding Press operations within the Shire regarding capital roadworks, planning potential rate reductions, concessional road permits and harvest plans? I'll answer in very general terms, but basically the situation is that, in answer to the question about the live streaming, it isn't a requirement, or won't be a requirement under the new legislation or the reforms to local government for committee meetings to be live streamed. I'm probably fairly ambivalent on the benefits. The current policy here excludes committee meetings. I think that can be a matter for any incoming council if they wish to consider that, but I'm not convinced that it would necessarily add anything to the decision making in terms of improving audit outcomes. With regard to the other parts of the question around, I think they go to the heart of conflicts of interest and primary returns. And I'll answer in the general here because I think it would relate to any member of any of the committees now or into the future. Anyone who is not an elected member or not a designated or relevant person defined under the Act is not required to complete a primary or annual return, so that the same case would apply here. And likewise, I would note that there are no decision-making powers held on behalf of the Shire by the Audit and Risk Committee. It advises only. I would note, however, that all members of committees are required to comply with the Code of Conduct, which was endorsed, I think, by the Council on the 28th of the 4th of 2021, and I expect any relevant interests to be declared. I don't believe there are any interests that would need to be declared there. And there is a fourth part to the question. Are you aware of any safeguards that may be in place to protect the community's interests in this situation? I would refer back to that Code of Conduct and equally the requirements of the Local Government Act and the regulations. I now turn to a question by Ms. Lisa Glover. And that is in relation to, in regard to the planned path on the east side of the river. When did the planning commence? How long has it taken for the Shire of Donnybrook Baling Up to progress this project? Is it fair to say that a project such as this takes time to 1, evaluate the need, 2, locate funds, 3, design and plan, 4, seek a tender, 5, implement the project, (build), 6, evaluate, ? Are there any other steps involved with developing a project such as this? This one relates to the path, the planned path on the east side of the river. The need was evaluated consistent with 2 council endorsed documents, the Shire of Donnybrook Baling Up Pathways and Trails Expansion Strategy and the Bunbury Wellington 2050 Cycling Strategy. The path is a high priority path identified in the Shire of Donnybrook Baling Up Strategy, and it's got a further potential link to Action 6.2.4 of the Bunbury Wellington 2050 Cycling Strategy, and the project also meets outcomes identified in the Council's Disability Access and Inclusion Plan. And we've had, over time, as I understand it, several community requests to complete the River Loop path, and it's ranked in the top 5 of our pathway program. And again, consistent with the strategy, the Shire sought external funding of the project from the West Australian Bicycle Network Grants Program, which is run by the West Australian State Government and administered by the Department of Transport. The first submission for funding for the project was made in June 2020, and there are a number of applications before the Shire was successful in obtaining funding, and in fact some further funding will be sought as we go forward. So Council endorsed seeking the funding due to the alignment of with the Council plan. At this stage, design and concept design and plans have been done in-house, and detailed designs will be undertaken as part of the project, and several stakeholders and groups provided support and written support for the project to assist with the funding application requests. Quotes to undertake the work will be called once the budget is endorsed and detailed design is complete. And again, once the works will be are expected to be delivered across 2 financial years, 23-24 and 2024-25. And again, in evaluation of the project or of the tenders, etc., value for money is one of those considerations. And we're not quite sure what was meant by the other steps involving a project, but obviously it will be run under the project auspices of now controlled by Mr. Marshall. Mr. Marshall, did you wish to make any other general? Have I covered the process to date?
Covered very well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And just for the benefit of those, I think one of the aspects here that has been raised with me, it's already an existing walking trail. In fact, I do it most mornings or when I'm down here, but it goes through the dog off-lead area, and I think there's some concern about the coexistence of dogs and the path. It is not a bicycle path as such, it's an all-abilities path, and I think one of the future stages of the project is intended to actually provide all abilities access over the, is it the weir at the end of the, or the at the end of the path. So I think it will be a good project to get done. So that is the response to that question. And Mr. Atherton, Shane Atherton, has asked about the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, which comes into effect from 1st of July 2023. Can the Commissioner or CEO please provide a summary of what impacts, be they positive or negative, the contents of the Act will have upon 1, Shire-owned land, 2, public open spaces including recreation and parks, 3, privately owned land including residential, rural and businesses in general. Probably it would take me all night to go through the detail. We did, as I mentioned, have a presentation yesterday by staff or a senior staff member from the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. Yes, the legislation comes into effect this weekend. Yes, it has caused quite a bit of anxiety. A couple of the key points, and I might ask Mr. Rose if he wants to add anything to anything I say. A couple of the key points was that under the existing Aboriginal or under the Cultural Heritage Act of 1972, the message yesterday was those requirements around consultation and avoidance of impacting heritage already exist, albeit people often don't know about it. The department does have a significant amount of information available on its website, but broadly speaking there'll be categories of activity. Exempt activity will cover a lot of agricultural type activity. I know you've spoken about Shire-owned land as well, but things like fire breaks, ploughing and seeding of paddocks, etc., if it's on existing fire breaks and on existing alignments or existing areas, then it is expected to be exempt. But I think people are encouraged to refer to the guidance. They're also encouraged to actually do due diligence in terms of any known sites. One of the concerns is also that there are not currently any of the local Aboriginal cultural heritage groups, I think, established, which are to be the knowledge holder to consult with. In the absence of those groups, the advice is to actually go to your local prescribed body, corporate or organisation, which could be Southwest Land and Sea Council or other groups. Certainly the message was that there will be a fairly, the initial phases will be very much focused on education and not seeking to take a punitive or overly heavy-handed approach to those parties where they unknowingly, transgress. But it is also designed to encourage that consultation. And I was just about to ask Mr Rose, who's run off to the thing, are there any other key points that you recall?
Much more.
No. But I would just really encourage everyone to have a look on the website at the materials. There is also, you know, with any of these things, it will impose an additional layer of getting to understand what it all means. I think one of the explanations given to me is it's very similar to some of the environmental legislation that now is sort of front and centre of thinking when you're doing anything. It's just also bringing in that. So that is the best I can do with that regard to that question. Now, Kevin, would you like to come up to the table and turn on the mic to ask your question? Oh, thank you. Yeah. Just in one of those chairs and just press the button on the right-hand side so you're on speaker.
So my first question just relates to, obviously there's a lot of people here.
So it's Kevin Johns from Donnybrook.
From Donnybrook.
Yeah.
I'm the business owner
Yeah.
of Triple J in town. And I just want to note that a lot of people have obviously turned up here and support tonight, so thank you very much. As part of that, I'd like to ask if we can bring forward 9.3 so we're not sitting here all night going through everything else.
It was something I was going to
For
actually...
half the management, for half the people that are here, or more than half the people that are here.
Yeah, I have no objection to that, and I was going to suggest it might be a good
Great,
idea.
And then my second question is, I'm hoping someone can explain to me what is the actual land capacity use or capacity use for an R30 zone block, please? So what capacity for an R30?
I would be drawing back on memory that I probably wouldn't consider reliable, or sorry, with that. So I'll go to the. I'll just double check. There's no reason we can't bring forward the actual item.
No, that's fine.
Yep. Okay. So we'll deal with that one. The capacity for R30, coming from a former planner, you may remember.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. My memory is pretty good, but not that good. From memory, there's 3 or 4 pages of a land use table within the town plan, within the local planning scheme, with prohibited uses, permitted uses, and yeah.
From memory.
That the actual type of use in terms of a fire station as opposed to the R30, the R30 refers to the number of dwellings on a particular amount of hectarage of land, basically. So that sits separately to the types of uses, I think, in terms of planning. But the question you're asking is, I think, is that under the current zoning of the land, a fire station would not be a permitted use on the SES site, but I think you will find that the existing fire station would actually be on either a non-conforming use or a public purposes site under the planning scheme.
Still essentially zoned exactly the same.
No, not necessarily, because it could be, you'd have to actually look at the zoning for that land. I'm not saying it isn't, because I haven't looked at the fire station, but it doesn't mean just because they're in the same vicinity. But broadly speaking, the SES building, as we refer to it, is actually zoned residential, and there are a number of uses that are not permitted uses. If there are existing activities in other buildings that are also now zoned residential, it is entirely possible that they are there under a banner of non-conforming use. I don't think it's appropriate to engage in a debate on it here. So thank you for that. All right. We will bring forward then item 9. I have to go back to it. 9.3.2. This is the lease proposal for lot 322 Bentley Street, Donnybrook, and can I acknowledge the people here in support of the work of BJJ or triple JBJJ. And also acknowledge that I have had a couple of emails of support as well, so thank you to those people that took the time to let me know their views of that. The actual recommendation, and I'll come to that shortly, but is actually saying that, in effect that Triple J performs a valuable service. It operates and has a number of a significant number of clients or customers or people that benefit from the activity and the support provided for the jiu-jitsu. But it's also saying we've got issues with the land use compatibility and other parties, and also that that we have a policy in place that requires us to follow a public of interest process. So it's suggesting either deferring any consideration for lease or sale of lot 322 Bentley Street, Donnybrook, until the property management framework is presented back to council, and declines the lease proposal from Triple BJ for those reasons. I just need to go through a little bit of information on this one, because it has been challenging. We acknowledge the really good work done by Triple BJ. I also thank Stuart Drummond for his help. Stuart came into the economic development portfolio early in 2023, and one of his roles is to attract, leverage and grow investment in the local government. And he has worked a fair bit with Triple J, BJJ over the past few months to determine if and how the Shire may be able to assist with the business needs for an alternative approach that is central to Donnybrook. Part of that consideration looked at a number of buildings. One of the things that Stuart, and indeed I was unaware of at that stage, was that in fact there had been previous potential interests in that building or potential uses for the building. The building is in reasonable condition. It was the old SES building, but it does have some challenges, including lack of toilets and some lean-to structures that we've talked about. I met with Kevin and Kylie Johns, the proprietors, in May, and committed to bring it to this agenda. The other aspect, and I appreciate that it's not, it was deemed not to be suitable for, or preferred anyway, if not suitable. I think arrangements were made or have been made that there can be some use of the recreation centre should this building not be available. From the conversations with the proprietors, they have said they don't see it as suitable. The challenge that I have, and I go back to those comments on good governance, is that I actually have to look at the law as it stands and not as I might want it to be, or some of those considerations, and the best value use. I cannot, and I'm just leading to that, support providing that lease at this stage without an expression of interest process. So the answer in effect is no. I did commit to providing a decision. I appreciate that's not the decision you will be wanting to hear, but I am faced with a situation where I don't have appropriate zoning. I have a council policy that is in place, been put in place and been in place for some time, that says for any commercial leases they must be advertised for expressions of interest. And the third part is that I have had two other potential organisations which are community organisations, and again I appreciate that Triple J actually provides places to people in need and some good services there, but it is of itself a business. It's a commercial entity, and I can't. We talked about whether we could change the nature of the business as well. I cannot do it. So basically that's the message I'm going to have to give you in supporting the recommendations. I can't enter into debate on the actual topic. I can say that the Shire is happy to continue to work with the business to try and find suitable locations, but this is not it. Yeah, so.
Can I just make a small statement, Gav?
I would not...
Very short.
Yeah, I would not normally allow it, but I'm quite happy to. Kylie, can you come up and press the microphone? And yeah, perfect. If you right-hand side, thank you.
Have I got it on?
Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. So, as you said, I'm Kylie Johns. I'm secondary owner at Triple J BJJ and secondary coach. I again want to thank everyone for turning up. It's probably about a quarter of our members. I would love them all to stand up now. This is very emotional. Triple J BJJ is officially closed to the town of Donnybrook now. We will continue to look after our members. Thank you, guys. But Donnybrook loses Triple J BJJ. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you, Kevin. So for the purposes of the record, the recommendation is that the council, the commissioner, one, acknowledges the proposal received from Triple J BWJ to lease lot 322 Bentley Street, Donnybrook, and recognises the various beneficial elements of the proposal. 2, acknowledges the zoning and land use incompatibility under Local Planning Scheme 7 of the lease proposal, specifically that the land use recreation / private is a X-use, which means a non-permitted use in the residential zone. 3, acknowledges that multiple parties have expressed an interest in leasing or acquiring lot 322 Bentley Street, Donnybrook over recent years. 4, recognises that lease or sale of lot 322 Bentley Street, Donnybrook should follow a public expression of interest process. 5, defer any consideration for lease or sale of lot 322 Bentley Street, Donnybrook until the property management framework is presented back to council, Commissioner, for final adoption following public consultation. 6, declines the lease proposal from Triple J BJJ for lot 322 Bentley Street, Donnybrook for the reasons outlined above. And I move and carry that series of 6 recommendations. Thank you. We'll now return back to the agenda. And move to presentation 6.1. It is petitions. We did receive a petition regarding the sealing of Kingspring Road, and it was signed by 24 individuals. And while the petition does not comply with the requirements of the Shire of Donnybrook Baling Up Meeting Procedures, Local Law 2017, as set out in clause 6.10, bracket 1, bracket small a, comma, bracket small c, or bracket small d, the petition matter is to be addressed at agenda item 9.1.1. So basically we can't accept it as a petition, but we're going to deal with it as general business. 6.2, no presentations. 6.3, deputations. 7, confirmation of minutes. We have a series of these to get through. 7.1, ordinary meeting of council, Commissioner of 24th of May 2023. The minutes of the ordinary meeting of council or the Commissioner held on the 24th of May 2023 are attached. Attachment 7.1, bracket 1. And the recommendation from the executive is that the minutes from the ordinary meeting of council, bracket Commissioner held on 24th of May 2023, be confirmed as a true and accurate record, and I am prepared to move and carry that motion. 7.2, special meeting of council, Commissioner on the 12th of June 2023. Minutes of the special meeting of council, bracket Commissioner held 12th of June 2023 are attached. Attachment 7.2, bracket 1. That was the special meeting that was held to progress from whole point 2 of the on the VC Mitchell project and move into the next phase. The executive recommendation is that minutes from the special meeting of council, Commissioner held on 12th of June 2023 be confirmed as a true and accurate record, and I move and carry those. 7.3, the Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting of the 30th of May 2023. The minutes of the Audit and Risk Management Committee held on the 30th of May 2023 are also attached as attachment 7.3, bracket 1. The executive recommendation is that the minutes from the Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting held on the 30th of May 2023 be received, and I move and carry that. Then we have the 7.4, the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting held on the 16th of May 2023. Those minutes are attached at 7.4 bracket 1, and the executive recommendation is that the minutes from the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting held on the 16th of May 2023 be received, and I move and carry that. Item 8, reports of committees, there are none. Item 9, reports of officers. 9.1 is the matter of the 9.1.1, the petition, the sealing of King Spring Road, Thompson Brook. The recommendation here is that Council or the Commissioner instruct the Chief Executive Officer to advise the petitioners that the requested sealing of the gravel sections of King Spring Road, Thompson Brook, approximately 7.3 kilometres, has been assessed in accordance with the Shire's Unsealed Roads Upgrade Plan. The assessment has determined that the upgrading of the 7.3 kilometres of gravel road of King Spring Road, Thompson Brook to a sealed standard is not of a priority that warrants inclusion into an existing works program and will continue to be maintained by the Shire as a gravel road. And 3, instruct the Chief Executive Officer, we might just make sure that has got the R on officer, to reconsider the priority for sealing the sealing of King Spring Road, Thompson Brook when the Unsealed Roads Upgrade Plan is next reviewed. There is some more detail in the agenda papers, but basically my understanding is that there isn't sufficient volume of traffic to place it above other roads at a higher priority. Mr Marshall, do we have any sense of what traffic numbers are on that road?
We do actually, Commissioner, because out of interest I went and had a look for myself just to actually learn a bit about it. On average about 35 movements a day, but when you consider one movement is probably out and one movement is in, and that was some records that were taken a couple of years ago. So that's the most recent records we have.
Thank you. All right. Well, on the basis, I appreciate that the petitioners will be disappointed, but we will at least consider it in the next review of the plan. But at this stage, I would move and carry that recommendation in 3 parts. Thank you. Okay. I'll go back to. You're still. Bear with me. The screens aren't cooperating. Page 13, thank you. Okay, 9.1.2, the realignment of the portion of locality boundary Brookhampton and Upper Capel. And the recommendation here is that the Council, the Commissioner, formally acknowledge the realignment of South Western Highway at Thompson Hill, which has resulted in a change to a portion of the locality boundary of Brookhampton and Upper Capel Road, as shown in attachment 9.1.2 bracket 2, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to 2.1 advise the Lands Division of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage regarding the change in locality for lot 502 on deposited plan 406747 as the applicable landowner of the State of Western Australia, and 2.2 provide all relevant information to Landgate in order for their mapping team to update the relevant databases as applicable to accurately reflect the changes to the locality boundary and intersection of Phone Road with South Western Highway. I gather this falls under your ambit, and I assume I'm told it's a pretty straightforward process issue, is it, Mr Marshall?
Yeah, Commissioner, that's my understanding as well. It's really a formality due to the main roads realignment.
Okay, thank you. Well, on that
And
basis,
there's no affected landowners other than the state.
okay. On that basis, I'm prepared to move and carry that motion too, or that recommendation. 9.2.3, pensioner rebate, general ledger balance write-off. The recommendation, the Council or Commissioner writes off the balance within general ledger 111,300, the emergency service levy rebate allowed being $65.25, and 2 writes off the balance within general ledger 174,310, sundry debtors rates pension being $1,000.12. Anything that I need to know about this, Mr. Dolcedelli?
No, not in particular. Essentially what...
Oh, Mike?
Sorry. Not in particular, Commissioner McGowan, but I just will say that this actually dates back quite some time. Staff have done a lot of work to actually reduce these amounts. It doesn't impact on any ratepayers. It's actually rebates that we've allowed to ratepayers, and then subsequently tried to claim those amounts through state revenue, and they've refused them. Now, this occurred some time ago, and it's essentially the work that's been done has arrived at the lowest possible cost or loss, if you will, in terms of our balance sheet. To actually invest any more staff time would way cost us more than what the amounts that we're talking about. So the prudent thing to do would be to write the amounts off.
Okay, on that basis, I'm prepared to move. Oops. Sorry, the account, we skipped over a couple of agenda items. That's my problem. I seem to have this thing about skipping over the accounts for payments. We have the schedule of accounts for payment at 9.2.1, the May 2023 schedule, presented for public information, attachment 9.2.1 bracket 1, 9.2.2, the monthly financial report of May 2023, is attached at 9.2.2 bracket 1. The recommendation is that the Council, the Commissioner, receive the monthly financial report for the period ended May 2023. And yes, I've received that, and thank you, Mr. Dolcedelli. So we've written off... Yes.
Item 9.2.3, page 17, if you could just read
Okay.
the motion that was
Yes.
carried.
Sorry, and for the benefit of those on live stream, 9.2.3, the recommendation being that has been moved and carried, that the Council of the Commissioner, 1, writes off the balance within General Ledger 111,300, Emergency Services Levy rebate allowed being $65.25, and writes off the balance within General Ledger 174310, sundry debtors rates pension being $1,000.12, and that was moved and carried. Now, the next item at 9.2.4 is a significant item and a very detailed piece of work, and I thank the staff for this piece of work, which has been, I think, in the making for some time. It is actually the annual review of the asset management plans, the consolidated plan, the parks and reserves plan, the buildings plan, the vehicles plan, the roads and transport plan, the reserve fund plan and the borrowings plan for 2023-24, and directing the Chief Executive Officer to endorse plans to guide future review of the long-term financial plan and development of the annual budget. Obviously, there's a bit of information on the buildings that I'll get you, and the other elements that I'll get you to speak to briefly, Mr. Dolcedelli, but equally one of the matters of interest is that one of the borrowings items or future borrowings items on the long-term financial plan relates to provision in the for an administration building for the Shire. I think that's been pushed out by a number of years, so if you can cover that when you speak to it. Thank you. If I can turn to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, so we actually do review these plans every single financial year, and it is still quite a process, even though we do it annually. I guess to give an overall picture as to what's occurred since last year and what impact that may or may not have had on our bottom line, essentially we actually do the plan over a 40-year period for the asset management plan. What that shows, we've had our parks and gardens asset classes all revalued and reassessed. And that also includes reassessment of remaining useful life on those assets. We've had the same happen with our buildings. The main impact is in the area of parks and gardens, or parks and reserves, should I say. So that might be barbecues at a reserve, it might be any number of things within that classification. But in a nutshell, the net transfers to and from the reserves comparative to last year's asset management plan has changed to the tune of $116,000 per year for the next 19 years. Okay, so there is obviously an increase in terms of the forward costing for renewal of the overall asset base. If you look at $116,000 today, that is roughly it's roughly 2%. It's under 2% of actual rates today. What I haven't done is I haven't had an analysis to say, well, in 20 years, what are rates and what is that percentage? So the asset management planning, we're certainly maturing every year in that space. And we'll continue to do so for the next year to 10 years. This is a journey. What will be important to link into that asset management planning is actually starting to create an actual plan to physically put in place percentages of rate revenue in future years, so that slowly but surely we can build the overall transfer growth that will be required to become fully sustainable. So if you actually look at some of the graphs, you'll see that some of the graphs start low, they start to go up, and then they flatten out. When they start to flatten out, you're sustainable, right? Fully sustainable. Now, the other commentary that I would make is that hopefully you've heard, but certainly we're embarking on a service level hierarchy for our buildings, and essentially we've got some 132 buildings, 140 buildings, which is an exorbitant amount for a shire of our size. And certainly, you know, I also put into that our rate player base. So that service level hierarchy will be about assessing what buildings we have, whether they're still relevant, whether they're utilised, do we keep them, what do we do with them, okay? So it's about prioritising what buildings we have, and certainly there'll be community engagement in that before any final decisions were made by Sitting Council. It's been deferred until we do actually have a set of elected members back on council. So once that occurs, we'll really kick that off. The other thing that would lead me to say is, and we haven't put this into motion yet, but parks and reserves is a big area, and we will have certain parks and reserves, some that we don't even recognise as in, oh, is that really a park? Is that really a reserve? That at one point was very useful, and at the moment probably has a bit of gravel on it and a rotten old seat, or it may end up that way. So we should also be looking at those assets as well and saying, okay, well, what's relevant today? So I think the combination of all of those things will get us to a point of sustainability into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Dosler. And can you just remind me again that figure of the actual net effect of the transfer to the reserves?
Yeah, so the net transfer to from reserves over a 19-year period starting 23-24 budget is an increase of the transfer or the amount of $116,000 per annum.
So an increase per annum of $116,000 per annum for 19 years.
Correct, and that's that. So the actual asset plans themselves actually escalate the price over the term. Okay, what the 116 is, it's the number, and as I said, that's roughly just under 2% of rates. Now, the reality is that in 5 years' time, or 10 years' time, 15 years' time, it's not going to be 2% of rates. It'll be 1%. It'll be 0.5%. It'll be next to nothing.
Because the present value.
Yes, net
Okay.
present value.
Net present value has declined. Okay, thank you for that. So again, the recommendation is that I endorse the annual review of the following plans. I won't list them all out again, but there are 7 of them, and direct the Chief Executive Officer to use the endorsed plans to guide future review of the long-term financial plan and development of the annual budget. And I will move and carry that motion. Also, probably pertinent to note at this point, and I mentioned it in my introductory comments, that we are embarking on the consultation on the asset management framework, property management framework, and that will be an important consideration around getting some consistency with leases and things as well. So thank you for that. And
Commissioner, our acting manager of exec services has just picked up a typo in one of the
Oh.
years.
okay, let me, yes, so, yes,
On
yes.
23.
Okay, so 1.2 of that previous recommendation, just for clarity, the asset management plan, parks and reserves should be 2023-24, not 2022-24. So we'll ensure that is amended. Thank you. Now, the next item, if I'm right, is 9.3, the delegations register. Thank you. And this is, I'm being asked to note the completion by council as a delegator of the annual statutory review of the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup Delegations Register, approves the delegations inclusive of amendments as per attachment 9.3.1. Bracket 1. That attachment identified where there had been changes. They were mostly sort of bringing things into line with reforms, as I understand it, with the Local Government Act. I just would make a couple of observations. I have no issue because they were all sensible and things that certainly I think no council or commissioner needs to get involved in. But a couple of observations of things that haven't actually come up for review this year, but I think have been cause that I think in the future a newly elected council might at least want to be aware of. There are delegations in there for expressions of interest process and some of the tender processes which have caused some angst in the past, so that might be something that the new council just wants to be aware of. I'm not suggesting they need to be changed, but be aware of that. And a quirky one, which I haven't given you any notice of, so forgive me for that, but in the cemeteries one, we only provide, in a sense, access to the plot for 25 years, which I thought seemed low. Is that something that's consistent with other cemeteries? Oh, that's the grant of right of burial. Okay, I just thought it seemed a short period of time, but that's okay, so be it. All right, so on that basis, I note the completion of the review and I approve the delegations inclusive of amendments as per attachment 9.3.1 bracket 1, and I move and carry that. So thank you for that. We've dealt with 9.3.2. And I would repeat again just that I do acknowledge the good work of the facility provided, but it's one of those things that in the interest of good governance I can't approve it. I'd also note the work Mr Drummond put into trying to assist. 9.3.3, fee write-off, Southwest Show Horse Association. Which seems to have been the association seems to have been in abeyance post-COVID, and we have confirmed that in writing, and I think there's an email trail in the papers. So I'm being asked that the council, the commissioner, approves the write-off of $637.95, being the annual ground rental fee for Reserve 10459, known as the Jim McDonald Oval, raises the debt to the South West Show Horse Association in the 2021-2022 financial year. It's not met since 2020 and it no longer utilises the oval. So on that basis, I'm prepared to move and carry that recommendation. So thank you. 9.3.4 is an administrative one. Again, I am the problem with this one. The seeking to amend the October council meeting date. We already have had one change in the sense that we brought this one forward initially because of the potential proximity to the elections. I have a clash on Wednesday the 18th, Wednesday the 18th, and so the proposal is to amend the scheduled meeting date for October 2023 ordinary meeting of council from 5 p.m. the 18th of October 2023 to 5 p.m. 19th of October, so the following day, the Thursday. The meeting venue to remain as the council chamber, and instructs the Chief Executive Officer to undertake all statutory advertising in this regard. I would note that will be during the caretaker period anyway, and it will be 2 days before the election, all things being equal, because in reference to some conversations yesterday about the date for the voice referendum, voice to parliament referendum has not yet been set. In the event that the voice referendum is scheduled for the 21st of October, the local government elections, I think they said have to be held within 2 weeks of that date, but can't be held on the same date. So that's just something to watch and monitor. So on that basis, I will move and carry that motion there as well. 9.3.5, the Small Business Grants Program. This is a good initiative where I think, again, Mr Drummond has been working with local businesses to provide or to pilot a grant program for small businesses where the value of the grant, it's a relatively small amount, but $30,000 was put aside in the budget. I think there's been discussions with 13 different businesses, of which 3 have now proceeded to actually, I think, a formal application. But what we're being asked to do is not to necessarily approve those tonight, but to note that the Chief Executive Officer will make a determination on grant approvals for the Small Business Grant Program pilot, where the value of the grant is $5,000 or less. Note that the Chief Executive Officer will present a report and recommendation to the Council on grant applications for the Small Business Grant Grant Program pilot, where the grant is more than $5,000. And note that the Chief Executive Officer will present a review of the Small Business Grants Program pilot to Council, which may include continued funding considerations during 2023-24 and onwards. And I think we've also discussed the fact that should this pilot proceed to something that we, as a council, takes up, we will need to have a policy around the application for the grant. But at this stage, as a pilot, we are treating it as a pilot. So on that basis, I will move and carry that, unless there's anything in particular that it falls. Stuart isn't here. Ben, is there any? No, thank you. Moved and carried. So moved and carried. Item 10, elected member motions of which previous notice has been given. There is none. 11, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting. There is none. Meetings closed to the public. We do actually, I have to approve the purchase of a new backhoe. From memory, the net, there were 4, it went out to tender. I think there were 4 tenders received, so I'm just giving a little bit of background. I intend to award the contract. I think the net cost to the Shire will be, from memory, $184,000 once the trade-in, I assume, of the existing piece of equipment is dealt with, but the report itself is confidential in accordance with section 5.23 bracket 2 bracket small c of the Local Government Act 1995, which permits the meeting to be closed to the public. And there's a contract entered into, or which may be entered into, by a local government and which relates to a matter to be discussed at the meeting. And apparently backhoes are very useful. I know that. Would this be one where we actually read out that we don't normally, because we need to notify the successful tender, don't we? I think so.
Mr. Dolsdale, could we read this one out afterwards?
Yes, sorry, I do believe we can. Effectively, we've got an offer, and the actual commitment, or the
Was I
recommend-
right on the 184,000?
You're out by
Oh.
$1,000.
Oh,
You're
sorry.
over.
Yeah,
You're being
okay.
generous.
Thank you.
But yes, the net cost is 183,000. I believe that it certainly can be read out aloud. Essentially, what it's doing is effectively allowing the award of the RFQ and instructing the CEO to carry over the existing allocations into the 23-24 annual budget. And in virtue of doing that, ensuring that the budget is increased to cover the full net changeover costs, which have increased.
Thank you. Well, I will do the formal bit of closing the meeting, but for the benefit of those who wish to depart at this stage, I just advise that the ordinary council meeting will be held on the 26th of July, commencing at 5 p.m. in the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup Council Chamber, and thank those that have come, but feel free to come back in. I can give you a bit of an update. Yeah, so, okay, thank you, and thank you for attending, and I will deal with the confidential item and then reopen the meeting just to close it. Thank you. Okay, I reopen the meeting at, whoops. I reopen the meeting at 6:04 PM for the purposes of reading out the resolution, item 12.1.1, the supply of the backhoe in response to request for quotation 307. The Council Commissioner instructs the Chief Executive Officer to award RFQ 307, supply of backhoe to West Track Pty Limited in accordance with their submitted price for the CAT 432 backhoe loader. 2, instructs the Chief Executive Officer to carry over the existing 2023-24 allocation for the purchase of a replacement Shire backhoe to the 2023-24 annual budget. 3, instructs the Chief Executive Officer to increase the 2023/24 allocation for the purchase of a replacement Shire backhoe in accordance with the table below. The table includes the plant item being a backhoe, the description being a replacement, the purchase price being $234,000, the trade price being $51,000, and the net changeover being $183,000. And 4, instructing the Chief Executive Officer that this can be released in the minutes. Thank you. And I close the meeting at 6:05 PM.